See Me, See My Ability, the podcast of the ARC Southern Maryland. We were lucky to be able to work into author and mompreneur Carrie Cariello's busy schedule. She has over 70,000 followers on Facebook. And among so many appearances, she was featured on NBC's Today Parents channel for her heartfelt posts as she and her family live in what she calls the secret world of autism. Carrie's written 4 books, 3 of them bestsellers on Amazon, inspired by the journey of Jack, her son, who is now in a special program and in college. I'm Rita Rich, and I teach podcasting and produce what you're listening to right now for the ARC Southern Maryland. Now stay tuned. After this exceptional conversation, I'll share how you can qualify to win a copy of Carrie's book, Half My Sky, Autism, Marriage, and the Messiness That Is Building a Family. I start off by explaining how our mission of the podcast, See Me, See My Ability, aligns with her mission to let people know they're not alone. I visit 3 counties in southern Maryland, Calvert, Charles, St. Mary's, and go around and record conversations. And we talk to experts in all sorts of topics that we hope will make people feel if they listen, there's an understanding ear out there. And I think that's where you started your blog. Mm-hmm. And then Facebook came along and suddenly you're finding, I listened to one of your Facebook Lives. You've got people from around the world setting their alarms to wake up way early.
Yeah, I'm just as surprised as you are. Trust me.
No, I think people are lonely, and they're lonely for that experience. And your writing style is just so open. That's very brave of you, Carrie.
No, thank you. I don't know any other way to be, I guess. Living out loud.
But you're a mom of how many? You've got 5?
I have 5, yes. 3 in college right now, which is mind-blowing.
Mind-blowing to me. And I don't have children of my own, but I have sort of adopted kids who grew up across the street from me.
Oh, nice.
And it's, it's hard to believe they're in their 30s. Aren't I still in my 30s?
Oh, I know. I know that exactly. Yes.
You write very candidly about living as a mom of one person, your second child, who's on the spectrum, and having to let him leave the nest. Half My Sky, Autism, Marriage, and the Messiness That Is Building a Family.
Yes, that is it.
Talk to me about what you mean by Half My Sky.
Well, it's interesting because that is my 3rd book. I have another one coming out shortly with 2 other bloggers. I don't title my books until I'm finished writing them. And then I sort of go back and think through like what showed up a lot, what phrase maybe showed up a lot. And interestingly, Half My Sky is not really related to my son, Jack, who's diagnosed, or the other kids. It actually captures what I think is my marriage. And so my husband and I have been married for 26 years. We have, had rough patches, had high patches, triumphs, lows, all of it, over the course of that time. And I just say at the end of the day, he always holds up half my sky when I'm unable to do it myself. So when I reread the marriage chapter, the book is a series of letters to everybody in my universe. And there's one to Joe, and I went back and reread it, and it just kept popping up to me, half my sky, and it just made sense.
That marriage part is the toughest part of all, I think. Do you have friends who also have a child with special needs or on the spectrum whose marriages could not last because there's just so many challenges?
I'm definitely connected with people whose marriages experience a tremendous strain. And yes, some that just simply couldn't survive. Kind of the day-to-day pressure cooker that is raising, children alone will expose every crack in your foundation, I always say. And you add one in who is perhaps experiencing severe anxiety like my son Jack does, behaviors like he had. It can be really, really take its toll on a marriage. I often talk to young moms, and I have a couple things I try to say. One is be married on purpose. We do everything else on purpose. We go to IEP meetings on purpose. We order pizza. We get fit, what have you. We watch movies be married on purpose. And that can just mean some day-to-day, small gestures that sort of keep you buoyed throughout life's chaos. Another thing I get asked a lot is, how did you make sure your kids got enough attention? Because there's 5 of them and they're very close in age. When my youngest son, Henry, was born, my oldest son, Joseph, was 5.5. So it was 5 and under 6 years. How do you make sure they get enough attention? And my answer is always worry less about the attention your kids get and more about the attention your marriage gets.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because you fall in love with a child, I imagine, every time a new one is born.
Yeah.
And of course, you're not going to say, I love this child more, or I stopped loving another child when I fell in love with a new one. But how much falling in love can a person do in one family?
Well, luckily it's an unlimited resource, but yeah, you ebb and flow with each of your kids. So my kids now are 21, Jack's 20. My middle son just left for college a couple weeks ago, so I'm adjusting to that. He's 18. I have one daughter, she's 17, and then my youngest son is 15. And what I've learned as a mom now of 21 years is, at some point, some kids are easier for you. You feel more connected to one than another. And then it just all sort of shifts in a really beautiful way.
So Joe sounds like a real special guy. So how did you meet?
Well, that is a funny story. I opened my first book, What Color is Monday, with this little anecdote that I was working at Pizzeria Uno's in college, and I was a server, and he was a cook behind the line. And the first thing I noticed about him, I didn't see his face. I heard his voice. I've always loved my husband's voice. He's a great voice. And we flirted a little bit, and he invited me to his apartment for dinner. And it was so endearing. You're really taking me into the memory vault, Rita. He was so endearing that he made chicken teriyaki, but he had cut up all the vegetables like ahead of time before I got there and put them in a little individual baggies, and I just remember how tender that seemed. And during our first conversation over that meal, I said, just so you know, I could never marry you because I would be Carrie Cariello, and that would be ridiculous. So, yeah. And that's 28 years ago, really, maybe more, because we've been married for 26. So here I am every day. I spell my name every single day.
This is your love story, because a lot of people don't have the benefit of that love story. Usually a child with special needs pops up, and there's sometimes with certain personalities, there's a blame game. Whose side of the family did he inherit this from? Did you have to deal with that?
I mean, I like to jokingly say it comes from my husband's side of the family, for sure. He's one of 6. There's 26 grandchildren. It's an easy thing to reach for. The truth is we don't, you could trace origins back on both sides, too complicated brain wiring, through the family tree on the branches. So no, we didn't fall too much into that. I think we were married in a Catholic church, and I think it really would. So in Catholic marriages, you do something called pre-Cana ahead of time, where you meet as a couple with different members of the congregation and talk about what's a purchase you could make without having to check with the other partner? What's a budget? Like sort of real day-to-day things. And one was, where will you spend the holidays? Not once did anyone say, what will happen if you have a special needs kiddo? What will that be like for you? How will you handle that? And even though to 20-year-old Joe and I was 21 by that point, it never crossed our radar at all that we might be raising a kiddo with some needs. But if somebody had just asked it once, it might have just planted the seed of what would that look like for us as a couple? Just a seed of preparation for what's to come in the future.
So you both had little boy number 2, totally unprepared for what to expect. And by the time you figure out what's going on with little boy, you've got another one coming.
Oh, so,
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there is no stopping the brakes on the fact that you're having a family together, and the family is what the family is. And I think that's quite a testament that you continue to have children, even, this sounds weird, but you had 5 after having the second one. And you have a total of 5 after having the second one. And maybe the third one you had no choice. But it was a crapshoot for number 4 and 5.
Well, and I write about this, that Jack was diagnosed at 18 months old, and I came home, and the next day I found out I was pregnant with our fourth child. So we already had number 3, Charlie Bear, and I found out I was pregnant with my fourth, and who turned out to be our only girl. You know, it is also interesting to point out that this is way back in 2006, 2007. There was not the abundance of information regarding autism that we have now. The internet was not available as a resource as much. And we were naive. We really thought he would outgrow this. And, you know, sometimes naivete is your friend, because I think if we had known all that was ahead of us, I don't know, you know, what our reaction would have been. But we just knew you get up every day and you get through the day together. And we kept growing our family. I didn't really worry about autism showing up again until my 5th, when I was pregnant with my 5th. By then I'd had enough, you know, exposure to the diagnosis and what it could mean. But, you know, I always say that in our house, autism is like a big glass bowl of jelly beans. Every one of my kids reached in and picked out a piece of candy for themselves. It's just that Jack took everything by both handfuls and, you know, took all the beans he could fit. So
you write very endearing thoughts about how your daughter becomes like mama number 2 at times.
Yeah.
Can I help with my brother? I think I understand him pretty well. Let me talk to him if you're having trouble talking, that type of thing. That's very sweet to read and to hear about. I think people realize that children are not the problem amongst other children. It's what the adults bring into it. Have you written about that?
That's a great way to put it. I haven't coined it quite as well as you have, but absolutely. I think each of my kids, you know, that's one of the questions I'm most asked. How do your kids relate to Jack? What is the relationship between them all like? And he has a very different relationship with each one of them. My oldest is only 13 months apart. He's always been Jack's guiding light as to what's possible. I didn't realize Jack was ready for some kind of residential / college programming until we dropped our oldest off at college. I always say Jack sees the world through fingertips before. He's very tactile. His vision is good, but he touches everything. And we were in the dorm room and he was touching the desk and the windowsill and the bed frame. And I thought, he's imagining this for himself. You know, and that's when I came home and started to get to work on looking for something. So my oldest, Joseph, he's the silliest human being you'll ever meet, but he doesn't have a mean bone in his body. He takes his role as the oldest very, very seriously. In my book, Half My Sky, I write a letter. It's one of the first letters is a letter to him, and I call it the letter I never wanted to write, which is, please don't desert him. Please, you know, Jack will be financially taken care of. He will most likely have a place in a program as a residential program, or be connected to a community. But make sure he has somewhere to go on Christmas Eve. You know, bake him a birthday cake. All those little things that once Joe and I are gone, I worry who's going to step up and fill in. My third son, Charlie, he's headed to Bates College. He's there now, actually, Bates College to pitch. He's going to play baseball. And he knows just how to stretch Jack without breaking him. He's the fun guy. He's the one, come on, Jack, let's go to Chipotle. Let's do this. Let's do that. Always introducing Jack to new things in his world. And as you mentioned, Rose, you know, my daughter, in the book, I call her like the proverbial canary in the mine. She always had her nervous system in tune to Jack's. And sometimes I worried that was at a cost to her, but it's just what she easily slipped into. And I'll tell you, in the high school, they always cover the book Of Mice and Men by Steinbeck. It's a classic. Each one of my kids had to be excused when they watched the movie in class because the main character, Lenny, reminds them so strongly of Jack. And out of all my kids, Rose was incredibly distraught for days. So lining up with the canary in the mine, sometimes I have to remind her, bring your own air, breathe your own oxygen. You know, he is not your weight or your responsibility. And then my youngest son, Henry, well, he's probably the most like Jack. They share the most symptoms in terms of rigidity and stubbornness and this propensity to police other people. And it's always, making sure everybody follows the rules, which gets in their way a little bit. But it's been fun to see even their relationship begin to develop differently now that Jack doesn't live here.
The fact that your marriage lasted through 5 children is amazing, because even one can play the parents off of each other if that's in that person's soul to do so. Did you ever have any of that experience?
Oh, sure. We call that parent shopping. When you go to one parent and you get an answer and then you bounce to the other parent and hope to get a different answer, the answer you want. Oh, we had that for sure. And Joe and I are very, very different parents. He parents very differently. So I often caution moms, like, don't step into the role of the person, right? In quote marks, quotations, like the only person who can do it. I'm the only person who can go to the IP meetings and pick out the food and make sure she or he has the right clothes and all of that. I was that for a long time. I always thought I had to mediate in between Joe and Jack because, as we know, people on the spectrum can only match the highest regulatory system in the room. And so Joe's a great big Italian guy. He runs at a 12. He is high all the time. And then Jack just automatically matches it. And I found that really stressful. And I was always trying to bring everybody back down. I have a phrase I say, Mom, M-O-M, is manager of moods. One day I just decided I can't do that. I didn't want to do that anymore. And I kind of stepped out, metaphorically from between them and let them figure each other out. And the truth is I was standing in the way of just a really beautiful relationship. And Joe can get Jack to do things and try things and learn things I never, ever thought possible.
I'm letting that sink in. That's great. The fact that you've been through all this learning and self-recognition and you put it out there for the rest of the world to read and take in is very comforting to a lot of people. I want you to know that.
Thank you. Thank you. I love the community that we've built.
It's a great community. And that's what we try to do with this podcast a little bit at a time. We want people to listen to it with everybody in the room. Because even if you've got a child, quote unquote, with special needs, with that diagnosis, they are smarter than you think. They might not be able to express or put into words, but they know when stuff is going on. They get it. They get that things are happening. And they get that people, are talking about them. Is there anything you want people to know about your books in general, where they should buy them?
Well, they're found Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, Target, basically anywhere books are found. There's an e-reader available, Kindle or ebook, and audio. Audio was available as of about 6 months ago. I know a lot of people seem to enjoy books more that way these days. So it's all out there. And, I just hope if it leaves one person who's able to see a piece of themselves inside of our story and know that they are not alone.
We're so appreciative of our time getting to know Carrie Cariello that we decided to treat our listeners to a chance to win copies of her book, Half My Sky, Autism, Marriage, and the Messiness That Is Building a Family. So here's how it works. You can help spread the word about our podcasts and this special episode, and you'll be entered in a drawing to win the book. There are 3 ways to enter between now and October 13th. It's super easy. Share the giveaway post from our social media pages. That's the ARC Southern Maryland. Leave a comment on the post and tag a friend who might be interested in the episode. Give us a 5-star rating on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Podbean. Take a screenshot of your review and email it to me at rrich@arcsomd.org. That's Rita Rich, rrich@arcsomd.org. You can enter just one way, or if you want to feel a little bit more luck in your favor, complete all 3 ways of entering to increase your chances. We'll be selecting the winners randomly after October 13th, so please don't miss out. Can't keep up with everything I'm saying now? Don't worry, I'll post this and other announcements in our show notes. See Me, See My Ability, the podcast from the ARC, Southern Maryland.